Welcome back to the Virtual Light broadcast. Today we have Lee Carroll here with us, and he's been channeling Cryon since 1989. He's written 14 books, 11 with the Cryon channelings and 3 with the Indigo Children. He's been invited to the United Nations in New York 6 different times, and he does seminars all over the world. His books are translated into 24 different languages, and I hear your audiences in Europe are much bigger, 3,000 people in a huge auditorium. Yes, so welcome.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sometimes not, but it often is that way, yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for being here.
Well, you're welcome.
And I have a couple questions. Are you a live channel? Is Cryon with you all the time?
All the time, that's right. It's called, it has many names. We call it a conscious channel. There are times when we will actually sit and channel, like Steve does with the group. But Steve will tell you as well that the group is with him all the time. And many times, and I've watched him, in fact, I've watched him do this broadcast, and it will appear as though he's segmenting his thoughts, and I can tell when the group is there, because it'll come sailing in, and he'll look at the camera and deliver something that's very profound, and you know that this is part of this this energy that we have, this live channel that is with us all the time.
And I think that's what we feel. We kind of feel it inside when.
If you really wanted to get a treatise in channeling, and I would love to someday to really dispel some of the rumors and some of the things that are there and are not there, I'd love to do that. So it'd be fun to have a panel of channels and have each one of them talk about what it's like, what it feels like, and truly to dispel some of the myths that are out there, which is, people think when you channel sometimes that you're supposed to be very quiet and you give a lot of time. You're supposed to huff and puff a little. Also, it's very important the number of candles and crystals that you would have around your chair. And then beyond that, your head is supposed to spin around. This is very important. Right. Occasionally pea soup will come out. And,
will you be doing that today for us?
Sure. and this is all, of course, and we make fun of it, but this is sometimes the way people think of these things. And of course, it isn't that way at all. In fact, you're really in touch with the love of God, the love of self. It's a feeling that cannot be faked. And we know we have it. And then through the years, the people who read our things and the various feel the energies that we project, they know we have it as well. So.
Yeah, well, looking forward to it. Is there, I know you have your book, just came out.
I have my, in fact,
January
you can't miss it. It's between us. Yes. Here. This is, you've all seen authors go on talk shows. And so you think we're here. Actually, can I just tell you really one of the main reasons that I came?
Sure.
Well, I can come to Las Vegas. It's very easy because I live in San Diego. But it hasn't until recently that Steve started serving donuts.
That's the secret.
I know. And when I heard that, I said, you name the time. He said, how about Christmas? And I said, I'm awfully busy. But he said, there's donuts. I said, I'll be there. So I'm here, and the group is here, and the people are here. And so we're having a good time.
Everyone loves donuts.
Yes. Well, here we are with this new book between us. As, authors on tour, we always have that stuck in our pocket. Someone whip it out and say, yes, but wait, there's more. And this is what we're going to talk about today, I'm assuming.
And I've read the other 2 books.
Oh, thank you.
And they are wonderful. So I'm looking forward to hearing about this one.
Thank you. And we'll do that as soon as you want to.
Whenever you're ready.
If I'm gonna do this, I would like to talk about, this is the book, and it's called The Indigo Children, 10 Years Later. It was written, like the last 2, by Jan Tober and myself. Jan is the research arm. She goes and finds all of these authors and all these writers and these captains of industry and all, and then I basically write the book. And the partnership between she and I has been through all 3 books that we've written. If I'm going to really give this the time that it deserves, and I tell you, right, in this, I know we're on broadcast segments, and I know the time is important, and because I don't know what the segments are, you just wave. All right. Okay. So if I go too long, or somebody out there will wave, and I'll just stop. But if you're going to do this right, I would really like to take this opportunity to give the history that wraps up then into this book, which may very well be the final one that we do on indigos. The reason I want to do this is because often on broadcasts, especially in radio, we have to do this in sound bites. And when you do it in sound bites, you only get so far, and people don't get the whole story. And I would love to just tell this right now, and it starts, I would say it starts 30 years ago, because there was a woman named Nancy Tappy, and this woman had a brain disorder called synesthesia. You can go on the internet and look up synesthesia if you want to. It's a real brain disorder. It's nothing. There's nothing wrong with being metaphysical or New Age or anything, but it isn't. It isn't any of those things. It's a mainstream brain disorder. This doesn't debilitate anyone. What it does is actually it's something that savants would have. This brain disorder let this woman have abilities we don't have. And if I say, if you look up synesthesia, you're going to see it. And one of the attributes is that it is mixed perceptions. So, for instance, she would eat a dinner, and she would eat her peas and taste triangles. Now, that's hard for me to even imagine. But this is the kind of swapping of perceptions, almost, if you want to say, an interdimensional perception. It really is an interesting disorder, and psychologists love to peek into this because it tells you perhaps even where we're going someday with psychology and what the brain can do. Well, she had this disorder, and she made the best of it, because one of the things that took place was that this woman saw colors around people. And the colors that she saw, people would say, well, she saw auras. No, she really didn't. That's a whole different deal. What she saw was the energy color. And the energy color had to do with personality types. She figured this out through years of having this disorder, that she could pretty well go up to somebody, and she saw their colors just standing there, and figure out what they were going to say to her, how they were going to act, because she knew their color. So she wrote a book and started her studies on teaching these colors to people. She would do workshops. The workshops were cool. I attended one about 25 years ago before I was ever a channeler. When I tell you, I was an engineer for most of my life, 30 years as an engineer. Last thing I wanted to do was become weird and strange.
That didn't happen.
I met Steve and it was all over. That's what happened, actually. So we became weird and strange together. We both joined the Fruit Loops and Wind Chime groups about the same time.
We're all there with you.
But
You're not alone.
But I went to this seminar she had, and I saw there was about 13, 14 colors that she saw around people. And these colors actually then drove the study that she had. She knew who partnered the best, what they were going to be like, their personality types. And she was doing this for a living. And she was doing it a long time when suddenly another color started to come in. One she'd never seen before, and only around babies. And the color was a deep indigo. So this became the terminology we've used called the Indigo Children. What it became and what we teach, 10 years ago we released the book called The Indigo Children. Maybe premature, I don't know. I'm going to tell you the story if there's time here how we got to this. But what happened was that she saw this and realized what was going on. This was the beginning of a different kind of consciousness. Really, we call it evolution. Could it be that the human race was beginning to evolve and she was seeing it first? So we call this the Indigo Children. We then, Jan and I saw, this was many years later after I was part of the Weird group, and we got into a situation where we started talking to people who worked with kids, and they were saying, you wouldn't believe the difference in children. It really got us going. Then Cryon actually channeled about human consciousness evolving, and we realized we had to write a book. It was time. We got a hold of the best people we could at that time. Daycare workers, health workers, especially daycare workers. They're the front line. Mm-hmm. The daycare workers were seeing the kids even before K1. They were seeing the children in kindergarten before, when they were just toddlers. They were saying these children are sharing their toys differently. These children argue differently. They have to be negotiated with. All of these things they're seeing in the children, which were very, very different, and they were adamant about it. Now, when you got into then some of the schools, we were starting to see issues, problems immediately. Now, back 10 years ago when we started this, one of the big issues that was beginning then and has not abated since is ADD and ADHD. These are supposedly behavior disorders. That means they would be like far and few between. But what has happened instead is they become like a communicable disease. It's like, I don't even know if you've seen now on the TV, you've seen ads for adult ADD.
Yes, I have.
Somehow you've caught it from the kids. This is one of these things. And you have now thousands and thousands of children who need to be drugged with Ritalin because they're having trouble in school or they won't pay attention. We are saying, and we said it 10 years ago, what these children are facing is a school system that's over 100 years old, with textbooks that I literally used, and all they did was change the cover and the names in them to keep them current. And this is something that now the children are reacting to an old consciousness. They're evolving. They are becoming conceptual, and we're staying linear. So I know I'm motor mouthing. Maybe that's why I'm here.
No, it makes sense.
See, this is my book, guys. This is what we're doing. See it. But this explains. So we produced this book 10 years ago on the Indigo Children, laying it out. And this was produced at that time, and this one is too, by Hay House. This is Louise Hay. And everybody should know this is the grand woman of publishing as far as we're concerned in metaphysics. We've had a chance to meet her many times, and if I could say it right now to this broadcast, she is exactly what you think she is. And that is a grand woman she's helped this planet in more ways than you know, and there's a lot of stuff under the hood that she won't talk about, that we know about, and it's no question that she's here for a reason. And, of course, she published the Indigo Children book, and the thing that happened that nobody expected, it immediately went into all the languages, and from there to now it has sold over 500,000 copies. Now, that is a lot of copies for a niche book. And that's because it went mainstream.
Yes.
And the reason is because everybody related to it. They had kids, and they said, "Oh my goodness, look at this! He's talking about me, kids." And so there was such an adherence to a consciousness of relating to it that people were excited. That's what happened.
That's what happened when I read it. I was like, I need help here. My kids are both different, and I had to deal with one completely different.
Completely different.
And she just kind of scans me and is like, I don't know.
That's one of the attributes too. Okay. Is you start, and mothers all over will like this, is they start teaching you. You start learning from them. The whole idea of shut up and sit down is not working. It's not going to work in school. It's not going to work in the home. None of these things. And it worked for us. I mean, fear and everything. It worked for us. Doesn't work for these children at all because they are conceptual. They know how everything works. And just even before I tell you about this book, which we haven't mentioned yet, one of the attributes of these children is that in the old days when adults would fight, the children would run into their room and shut the door because this was a security being threatened in their lives. Suddenly, you have these children will stand there and try to negotiate. They'll put their hands up and say, "Now, Daddy do this and Mommy do this." And they will actually try to be part of this thing because they think they see solutions. These children feel energy. We never felt energy like these kids do. They see a concept of energy. When they go to school and we try to teach them linear things, A, B, C, they've already got the book. And they want a whole different approach. The Rudolf Steiner schools and to some degree the Montessori schools and some of these others are very good at this. They've been doing conceptual teaching for a long time. These people are franchised, so not all schools are the same. But basically what they do when the kids show up is they say, okay, here's what we're going to do. How shall we do it? In what order and how fast? In other words, they give the children choices. It's conceptual. And these schools are like at the top of the list as far as I'm concerned on dealing with this issue. And they have for a very long time. Well, what happened was, now we get controversial, guys. And this is one of the reasons we had to write this book, is that from 10 years ago to now, I watched this whole subject take off into oblivion. It was a fad. Most people in this group have heard of Indigo Children, and you might have heard about it on ABC News, Good Morning America, New York Times. They all did reports on this because it went mainstream, and they had a ball with it, and nobody believed it. They were smirking all the way. They were laughing all the way. They brought in pediatricians and psychologists who just had a ball with it. They really took us into the gutter with it. There were a number of books released. There were a number of people who did things regarding movies and documentaries and this to maybe try to correct it. All it did was to stir the pot. There were also those, and I'm not going to name them because that's not what we do there, but it disappointed me greatly, and I'll just say it, who just took the name and made money with it. That's all they did. That's all they wanted to do to help the children at all. It didn't explain it. Soon we had, if you said Indigo Children to the public, they may say, well, that's a super psychic kid with a dark blue aura. And that's not right. These are the children that are strapping on bombs and taking guns to school. This is part of a new consciousness, and we got to figure out why. What would create something like that? Because you can see this is different. We didn't have anything near that when we were kids. This is a different consciousness, so it's all not love and pudding. There's two sides to this. It's a psychological attribute we got to understand if we're going to parent them, if we're going to school them. Here's what the book is. 38 authors. I went and found for 2 years, and Jan helped me with this. We went and found the captains of industry. We found the teachers of the teachers. We have people who have teaching the teachers in the universities. And finally, they're commenting on this and saying, it's real. Here's what it is. We got to do something about it. As far as the captains of industry, these kids are now getting into the workplace. You realize they've been coming in a long time. And they represent most of children being born today, almost all of them. They're all coming in at the same time. They don't all have ADD, but it looks like it. You know, that ought to tell somebody something. You know, it's no longer an anomaly. These children are different. And what's going on is that they're hitting the workplace, and the managers, and I don't know, there's maybe even some people in our audience, the managers are saying things like, these young people are completely whacked. They're out of place. They come in. First of all, they don't want to do the hard stuff. They don't want to clean the toilets. They don't want to start at the bottom. And what they want to do is get a raise. That's what they want to do.
They get right to the point.
They want to get, and they can always see things that can be improved. So they would like to manage the place right now. They don't understand starting at the bottom. They have a concept of the whole place, and they want to fit right in. They don't want to be linear. They don't want to start at the bottom. And these young people will quit before they will do the things that they don't believe that they should be doing. This is not a sense of royalty as much as it is a sense of knowing that gets them in trouble.
Is it knowing of that it's not working?
Knowing they think they know how to do everything, basically. And at some level, they do. There is a concept there of humanity that they carry around with them. This is what the parents are seeing when you're raising a 3 or 4-year-old and out of their mouth is coming these pearls of wisdom. They shouldn't know this stuff, you know, and they're dishing it out to you, and you go, whoa, we better write this down, you know. Yeah. And so that's what book 2 was about, was some of the things that they were saying. So we're seeing a lot of these children start to hit the workplace and create sparks. Big spark. Now, I got stories I can tell you, but I don't know where we are in the interview and what you might actually want to say something. Jennifer,
I just wanted to know about the book, actually, about these kids.
You know,
I'm pretty content right now.
You're pretty content?
Yeah, I'm very interested
I was just noticing that you're on the show with me, and
it's the Lee Carroll show now.
So, I just woke up to that fact, and I'm looking at this pretty lady, and she's actually the one who's supposed to be doing the interview, and she hasn't said a thing. They say, tell me about your children.
I'm sorry.
Okay. We had a fun experience. Shut me off when you have to. We had a fun experience in Hawaii. And the fun experience was is that we do cruises, Crying cruises we have every year, and we were on, I think, the 7th or 8th cruise, and we love to go to Hawaii, so I know Steve does too. And it's a piece of Lemuria, and it's just a beautiful place, so we cruise there when we can. And in the past, these cruise ships, first of all, they're all Norwegian. The Norwegians have said they're the only people who know how to cruise. Now, I don't know whether they believe that or not, but when you talk to them, they say that. So that seems like all of the cruise lines have the Norwegian deck. That's where all the captain is and all that. And so we don't have an American cruise line almost anywhere. There's a few, but mainly they're Norwegian cruise lines. So one of the rules that the United States has is the touch a foreign port rule. If they're going to cruise out of any place, they've got to go to a foreign port and come back. That's a rule. Most people don't even know about it, but you really know about it. If you want to cruise around Hawaii, they have to go 1,200 miles to the Fanning Islands down by the equator, which takes a day. Then you get off, and you go to this little atoll where there's a few natives in grass skirts and sell you a funny little thing, and then you cruise 1,200 miles back to the islands. It's been this way for a decade. And anybody who's cruised Hawaii knows that's the way it works. So it takes 2 days out of your cruise, and you do this. Patty and I did this one Christmas, and we've done it with a group 2 other times. With our group, I say the group. Every time I say the group, I think that's the Lightworker group, is the Crying group.
How many people are with you?
Not a lot. We have maybe 70, and it's a great time where we throw food and stuff. We have people here that have been in the and that's what we do. We just make fools of ourselves. We also have teaching and channeling and all things, but when we're not doing that, we're having fun. And we're having fun when we do that too, not the men. So what happened is the state of Hawaii said, we've got an idea, and they said, we're going to make an offer to the cruise lines that if you will use our young people, Americans from Hawaii who live there, for your ships, we won't make you go touch a foreign port. Suddenly, there's all of that savings. They don't have all the fuel. Can you imagine the fuel is spent 1,200 miles
No,
on a
I'm
cruise
just trying
ship?
to figure out the logic.
I mean,
It's
well,
not-
there's no, of course, it's a rule. There's no
don't get it. I
logic,
don't get
Jennifer. Come on. This is about commerce and stuff. So what happened was the cruise ship said, this is the greatest thing. Well, if anybody's been on a cruise ship, then you know that the best servers, and they all make a living out of this thing, and the consciousness of the Filipinos and the Romanians and all, they make a living. They're some of the best cabin people and all like that, and you just love them. It's a wonderful, and they love it. They're on the ship for 3 or 4 months. They send their money home to their families at work. Well, all of that's going to go away, and now you're going to have American young people manning these. They're going to be waiters. They're going to be stewards. They're going to be all. And here's the long story short. Well, they're all Indigos. Here's the long story short. We took that cruise, and it was a disaster, absolute disaster. First of all, not one of them knew how to make a towel animal. Now, you don't go on a cruise without a towel animal. And we almost cried when we figured that out. No towel animals. So that was one of the things. We went to these fine white glove restaurants upstairs at the top, where they serve you and all this. And we were there, and they were, white gloves, these young people. We realized that under their tuxedos, they were wearing jeans because they were former McDonald's people who were pretending to be these, and they didn't even know that the salad dressing went with the salad. I mean, these children, they were children. The Indigo kids, they didn't want to serve. They were there on an adventure, and almost none of them were going to come back.
They were there to play.
Yeah. Now, last I heard, there was a whole lot of Filipinos and Romanians that had moved to Hawaii getting citizenship so they could work on the ship. This is what's going on. So we got to see this firsthand, that they just are not prepared or ready for this. Now, this is not an indictment of the young people's consciousness. I'm just saying it's different. Business is going to have to adjust itself. There's going to have to be a way of dealing with this consciousness that makes sense to both sides. And it's going to have to be negotiations. The kids are going to have to buckle down and realize that everybody has to start at the bottom, but there's going to be a system. Maybe it'll be an advancement system that's faster than the one based upon performance, instead of just you got to stay here a year no matter what and clean toilets, And that is what they're objecting to. Linear rules that don't make sense because they're conceptual kids.
Well, and is it going to be kind of a balance where the boss and the employee kind of aren't
I hope so.
in that superior...
I hope so. I sat with a man who has a company with hundreds of employees, and he was saying it's the worst thing that's ever happened to him in his life. Yes. He just didn't know what to do. And I gave him the Indigo book. I'm not sure it helped. Because, a system is a system, and it's tough to change it. We're going through pruning in America right now. We're going through a lot of things right now, according to Cryan, and I think this is one of them. I think business is going to shift and change. Negotiations are going to change. Unions are going to change. I think everything is going to be shaken up here, and this whole consciousness is going to stick in there. I'm sure be part of it.
What else do you see going towards the ascension?
I see peace on earth. Because
Beautiful.
these children...
Yes, it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
These children are going to make a difference. We're already starting to make a difference in integrity. We are making a difference in, for instance, this whole thing that the banking system has been... Cryan called it 1 year ago, and you can even see it. It's on my website. It's channeled. What would happen? He even talked about the first financial institution to go would be insurance, and it was. And so here it was. It's not a big mystery. It isn't a mystery. We have to clean up integrity in banking and all of these things, and we're doing it. We're the first nation to do it, and it's going to go worldwide. It's just the first. The Indigo children will someday be Indigo adults. They're going to be Indigo leaders. Right before we go, and I know we have to, I will tell you this. Nancy Tappy, 2 years ago or more, at the Democratic Convention, when Barack Obama gave that speech, saw him on TV and said, he is an Indigo.
Nice.
One of the things that happened in our campaign, as you saw, that everybody complained about, is here's a guy supposedly with no experience, but the persona of knowing everything.
Wow.
So that is an Indigo attribute.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's interesting. What other predictions has he had, Cryan? That have come
Only
true?
that this new consciousness is going to present itself. We are going to have to change. We already are. I would love to see mainstream medicine come along and stop drugging the kids. I'd love to see them actually start changing the books in the schools. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. This may actually make a difference.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you for bringing your book and talking about it. And you can find out more about the Cryan books, the Indigo Children at the cryon.com website and learn more about all the stuff you offer on your website. I know you have you have a free magazine and you have a lot of information about the DNA layers.
Hundreds of hours of free audio. Cryon.com
Yeah, all the channels I know.
/ free audio. Yeah.
Yeah, and about your seminars and the
That's right,
books. And
right.
we want to thank you so much for being on the show. You're a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.